Hello everyone, welcome to In Colour, hosted by myself, Hamish Hallett, where I interview individuals from a variety of professions to get to know these people on a more personal level. I hope you are having an amazing day wherever you are listening from or watching this interview from. So for this episode, I've been joined by Emily Pritt. She is part of the firearms industry, where she's a federal firearms license dealer and is an NRA certified instructor. But she isn't just a person part of the firearms industry. She's also a marketing strategist, where she holds an associate degree from Pellissippi State, a Bachelor of Science in Communication from King University, and is currently pursuing a master's degree in strategic communication. But on this show, as you should know by now, we want to understand Emily on the personal level and away from what she does in the firearms and marketing industry, and to really understand what influenced her to be part of the firearms industry, for example. So let's bring Emily Pritt onto In Colour. First of all, Emily, thank you so much for coming onto In Colour. I know you're a very busy person, so I really appreciate it. And also there's a time difference, so even better. So thank you so much, Emily, for coming on to. No worries at all. Absolutely. Fantastic. So what influenced you to become part of the firearms industry? Because I'm really interested in, as a UK perspective, I'm always interested to understand, what got you in terms of the firearms industry. So yeah, what influenced you, basically?
Truthfully, it was an opportunity that arose. Everything that we do in life, I believe, is made up of billions of micro opportunities. So I was going through a divorce, and I had a friend that he was a general manager of a motorcycle shop. And he had switched over to a gun shop and said, "Hey, do you want some part-time work?" So I had all the time in the world. So I was like, sure, why not? And the rest is history from there. I got into the firearms industry not knowing, not caring. I was pretty indifferent to firearms. And then being immersed in the industry, it changed things for sure.
Wow, that's so interesting, because I never thought about that in terms, because I always, for sometimes I speak to a lot of people who are from the firearms industry, and most people say it's because of family, it's because of like culture and stuff like that. But that's so interesting that you kind of got in terms of it just like unnaturally, just thought, throw stuff in there, and that's so interesting. That's so amazing. And what because you said about, like, in terms of immersing yourself within the firearms industry, like what in particular were you most sort of like persuaded by within the firearms industry that made you like stay in it within right now, would you say?
I guess it really is, the more I became aware, the more I thought, "Ooh, wow, this is something that I could use to help people." By nature, I'm a helper personality. Any of the personality tests you take, I'm always there to support others. So I started running a range counter, and that's kind of how I got my feet wet, so to speak. To then I was scheduling classes, teaching classes. Then if somebody had a problem with their Glock or their Smith & Wesson, I want to know how to fix that, because I'm a helper. So I was taking armor courses, doing ATF compliance for other gun shops as well, making sure that we're staying legal. There's some parameters we have to follow with the ATF. And it just kind of, like I said, kind of took over from there. So there's not one thing other than just finding passion, so to speak. So it's a male-dominated industry, and honestly, being a female, I have an advantage, but also I have knowledge. It's not just a girl with a gun. I know what I'm talking about, which is helpful as well.
Absolutely. No, definitely. When you spoke about advantage, what do you mean by that in regards to like advantage within your industry, would you say?
Well, I find that for so long, the firearm industry has been predominantly a male-focused industry, and finding more and more females. There are tons out there, competitive shooters, other instructors, that it's not a gender-based industry. Really, none of our industries are anymore. So you don't have to just, be a guy with a gun to know what you're talking about. And an advantage that I have is I will train first-time shooters, females, yes, but I also can train males. Most of the people that I interact with maybe they went hunting years ago, or they had an uncle that took them shooting. They were in the military, but it was a while ago. And so with the handgun platform, I'm able to talk to kind of both sides. And as a female, I've been in the shoes of someone who's never touched a gun before, doesn't know what to do. You know, they're afraid. There's all these emotions. So I can come alongside them and say, I've been there. I know exactly how you're feeling, you know, and give them examples, relatable stories, and show them hands-on, and build confidence and empower them to take something that they're fearful of and then feel that, okay, now I'm empowered. Now I can do this. So it's really an awesome thing to be able to witness and be a part of.
Oh, completely. I mean, I'm not someone who is in the firearms industry, but I kind of understand the feeling of like helping others and seeing like people improve in terms of whatever they're doing. And I find it's interesting that you said that you don't feel like it's a male dominated industry. Not to put words in your mouth, it's not a male dominated industry. Do you often feel like, because maybe I've slightly have a preconception maybe that I see with guns it being quite a male dominated industry. Do you feel that's a misconception of the firearm industry where it is male dominated? Do you feel where it's actually more even, as you've said? Do you feel?
I believe it is more even. I think that's just in gender norms. You know, you hear about, oh, the guys are going to go hunting, the girls are going to go shopping, and it's really firearms are used for many purposes. So you've got personal defense, collectors, we have competition shooters, hunters. So there's a lot of different ways to approach firearms. So it doesn't have to just fall into one track. And I mean, there's plenty of gals out there that, you know, use it for competitive sport, or just want to go to the range and practice and test their skills and say, hey, I can do this. This is fun, you know, to go target shooting. It's challenging. It's something I can do with the guys, but it doesn't have to be with guys.
Totally. That completely makes sense. I mean, that is good, actually. I've learned something different today, because I feel like a lot of people think it is, from my perspective, from talking to people, whereas actually it's not. And I think this is what the show is all about, is to really go away from the kind of the norms and change, and to really tackle these misconceptions. And I think that's really interesting of what you kind of said. And to go a little bit more back to your own kind of story in terms of your journey, like who would you say has kind of influenced you the most, if that's within the firearms industry or even the marketing industry that you're kind of within right now? What do you say?
There's a lot of names that come to mind. And one thing especially with marketing, there's a lot of ways that we can be influenced, get a lot of ideas that generate, but we want to make them our own. So I learned early on to be me, just me, not try to be somebody else. There's no way to be everything to everyone. So there's bits and pieces of things that I can be influenced by, to say, oh, I really like the way that they promote this, or different training course. I mean, I'm not the only female firearms instructor, but there's others out there that have a different demographic, that appeal to a different type of student. And that's okay. The fact that we're all here to share that knowledge and to give the population a better understanding of how to safely handle a firearm, I'm all a part of that, you know? So I mean, there's so many names, you know, and if I say one, then I'm leaving off another, so I don't want to just.
It's fine. You can name as many as you want. You can name as many as you want, if you can think of.
Yeah. Well, one he's actually. If you want to see some really cool stuff, you have to look up. His name is Jerry, and I will butcher his last name, but it's Mitchulek, Miculek. So he's a competitive shooter. He's probably the world's fastest shooter. You can see him with a wheel gun, a revolver, or he'll shoot clay. So he's just super fast, super cool, and he has a family of competitive shooters. He's sponsored by a lot of the name brand firearm manufacturers out there. And so if I'm having like a tough day, I need to unwind, I need to laugh, I need to do something just to kind of come back to earth, I will
Yeah.
watch some of his videos. He's got them on YouTube, and he's hilarious on Instagram. But he's one of, I'd say maybe an idol. So I met him at the NRA convention that we had a couple years ago, and kind of being starstruck. He was like the one for me. And there's plenty of other celebrity. I mean, Chuck Norris was there at the Glock booth and stuff like that.
Oh, really? Wow. Chuck Norris. That's interesting. Yeah. God, that's so awesome. And like, because just let's go back to then this person that you why would you say he's your idol then? Because I'm really interested in, because I find a lot of people idolize certain people. I'm just interested, like, why in this particular person you idolize this person.
He has something I don't have time for, which is competitive shooting. One of the companies I'm involved with, we have a competitive shooting team with world champions and national champions. And I think, honestly, even though I instruct others how to shoot, I'm a student first and foremost. And so there's always a lesson or something that I can learn. I want to push myself to be the best that I can be in my field. And so when I see the world's fastest shooter that's out there, who is personable and, can just kind of a comedian at times, it kind of resonates with me. It makes me feel like myself as well, because I try to take elements like that, especially when I'm teaching 8-hour courses, to bring in humor and other things to make people become a little less tense, so that they can really connect with me, but also absorb the material that I'm trying to provide, so that they're ultimately being safe for themselves and for others.
Absolutely. I mean, that sounds really interesting, that the fact that you idolize him because of his comedic value, and it kind of like letting their sort of like hair down in that sense. Because I feel like, because like doing, like looking at, like, for example, your website and looking at what you do, like one of your values is like being authentic and things like that, which is really, I think that's a really good value to have, because I find a lot of people struggle to be like authentic in that sense. So like, how do you stay authentic? That's my kind of question.
One way that I could do that is by showing parts of my life. When we get into what I would call heavy material in the, I teach the Tennessee handgun carry course. It's our enhanced handgun carry course through the state of Tennessee's Department of Safety and Homeland Security for people who want to get a handgun carry permit. Some of the heavy stuff we're talking about is suicide prevention awareness, active hostile shooter, things like that. So I can bring in personal stories that directly relate to what we're talking about. Like my brother. My brother had 2 friends ever since elementary school. Both of them died by handgun. One at the hand of his own, and the other by someone else. He was murdered. And when we're talking about suicide prevention and awareness, and there's these things you got to kind of think about, putting in perspective, warning signs, so to speak. I say, even me as a firearms owner, and I am an FFL holder, federal license to buy and sell guns, I got to think about my baby brother. So when he starts having an interest kind of out of the blue and asking me about guns and all this, I have to, as big sister, think about what's going on here. Oh, wait a minute. This is a male-dominated industry. Guys like guns. My brother can like guns. So putting things in perspective, that's one way that I can be authentic and talk to my students and say, hey, we all got to think about this stuff. Another example is talking about keeping your firearms out of the hands of children, especially children. I've got 3 of my own, but keeping firearms out of the hands of children and unauthorized persons. So I tell a story about my grandmother, and there's a viral video on YouTube of this grumpy man in Publix. It was on Good Morning America and some other shows, but he's grumpy because his wife had passed away. And this kid in the Publix grocery store says, hey, old man, today's my birthday. And they actually become friends, and they visit each other every week and things like that. But that man was Mr. Peterson, who married my granny's best friend. And they had both lost their first husbands to lung cancer. So when I tell this story, some people are like, yeah, I think I remember seeing that about the grumpy guy in the Publix and all this. I was like, well, this is how it ties all back together. My granny's friend met Mr. Peterson on the internet. My granny thought she could meet a man on the internet too, except she met a con man. Okay. And my mom knew something was up. We lived in the Carolinas and my granny lived alone in Georgia. So she packs up the car, my mom does, brings all my siblings and myself. We're down to Granny's house, and I'm the oldest. We are 10, 12, 8 years apart from each other. They're all much closer in age. But the first thing that my siblings want to do is they want to watch TV. When you get to Granny's house, sure. So in the den, in the TV armoire, in the bottom drawer where the VHS movies are, my 6-year-old sister finds a loaded 38 special in a Disney World bag in that drawer. And I took it out of her hands. I was 16, 6. I don't know if I had safe handling at that time. I just know, oh crap, my sister's got a loaded gun. And my mom went crazy over, what are you doing? But my granny lived alone. We were states away. That was the best place she could think of to hide this pistol from a crazy guy she had met on the internet that was living with her. Yeah. So stories like that, there's ways to incorporate the humor, or somebody to go, okay, that makes sense. Now I see the bigger picture of what you're saying. It gives you a platform to say, I don't care if you live alone. If you have friends that have kids, neighbors with kids, coworkers with kids, it's your responsibility to keep your firearm out of the hands of children and unauthorized persons. So it just drives everything, reinforces what we're talking about, with also showing a little bit about me and, my family, all the stuff we've done. Yeah.
Of course. No, I think that's really, I mean, bloody hell, those stories are like, just hearing it, I'm like, wow, God. I mean, yeah, they're very like, yeah. Do you often tell? I'm guessing you often tell those particular stories quite a lot. I'm guessing in that sense.
There's certain sections in our curriculum where it makes sense, and so I'll change it up. I don't want to feel like I'm a robot telling the same stuff over and over again.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is, especially going to school for communication. A lot of it is, it's also reading the crowd, your students, kind of assessing where they are, and really to make learning engaging as possible. I think that if I can hold someone's attention, then they're going to be more receptive to what I'm saying. And, the best students are the ones that are willing and ready to learn,
Yeah, absolutely.
If somebody walks in and they're just, I don't want to be here, I have to do this for 8 hours, they're not going to listen to a word I say.
Is that sometimes quite tough then? Especially let's say you're trying to teach people like what you do and stuff. Is that quite difficult sometimes when you go into a room and there's just people who are just not interested in what you're talking about? Is that quite difficult for you? And how have you overcome that kind of obstacle of trying to get people to be interested in what you talk about?
Well, some of it is in just techniques of teaching. So calling on someone without putting them on the spot, asking questions, or saying, you want to write this down, you need to pay attention to this, you might see this later on the test, things like that. It will get people to wake up. Honestly, I've had usually you get people who will give you bad feedback, but I get a lot of good feedback of people saying, really? I thought this was going to be a boring class, but you made it fun and entertaining. And, oh, I learned something. I never knew that. And, it's so surprising, because when it comes from that person in the back of the room that will then later give you that comment, you're like, where did that come from? Like, I thought this guy was upset the whole time, and, he loved it. Yeah.
Definitely. And what's been the most, I'm guessing you've had loads and loads of comments, really good feedback in terms of your classes. What's been the best comment you've had in terms of your teaching, would you say? If you can remember one.
Well, let me tell you this. I learned years ago to have, it's one of these other things for just mental, keeping yourself motivated and things like that. Somebody said to keep a log, and it sounds like it makes, I'm not full of myself at all, but to keep a log of these things, because you can go back and reference them. And when you are having a tough day, or you want to quit and you're like, why am I even doing this? You can go back and see that feedback. So I have a log, I'd have to pull it up, but anytime I get a good message or something like that, or even constructive, I put it in there because it helps me grow. But one that stands out the most is from a guy who took my Curie course. He had his family take the course as well. And afterwards, he sent me a text message, and he said, along the lines, I could probably pull it up. It was from a few years ago. While my phone's right here, let me just do that. So
if you want to, that's absolutely fine.
Don't want to do any misjustice to it. So,
get it completely wrong, get like fact checked, like, oh, you didn't actually say that, you said this.
Wait a minute. All right. So he said, this is from March 1st, 2020. He said, by the way, I forgot to tell you yesterday, great class. Probably the best concealed carry class I've seen or heard of. You are a very good instructor. And I'm a retired 21 years Vegas Metro SWAT officer and trainer and former Army infantryman. So I know and appreciate what good training is. Good job, ma'am. I'll be recommending your class to anybody who asks.
Oh, and I'm guessing that person, like, has got so much experience as well. And that must mean a lot to you, massively. Must do, absolutely.
Yeah, and I was like, now, is this my shining moment? Have I reached the top? No, absolutely not. There is still more room for me to, just crush that ceiling and keep being the best instructor, the best person that I can be. I never want to settle. I mean, that's why I'm in grad school. So
interesting. Why do you not want to settle? Why do you not want to settle? That's a really interesting thing you said. Yeah.
Because I believe in lifelong learning. And the more knowledge that I have, and being a helper personality, the more that I can pour out, the better it is for others. It's for their benefit. Having a bunch of knowledge in my head that I keep to myself doesn't help anybody. So I want to share that. But I want to do that in a way where what I know I can provide, but let somebody else use that and make their own judgment, let them guide their own path, without listening and sticking to every word I say. Like, one of the most aggravating things that people will ask me of, oh, well, what gun do you have? Oh, well, what ammo do you use? It doesn't matter what I use. These are things I would suggest. I probably be cautious about this, but I want you to make your choice for you. Don't pick what I have just because that's what I like. We've all got our own choices to make. Don't copy me, because what works for me may not work for you.
I'm guessing, do you often get referred to as like an expert on certain things? And do you not like the word expert? Because I find I talk to a lot of people who also don't like the word expert because you think you know everything, whereas actually you're someone who's willing to learn more and more. So is that sometimes a label that you often get as an expert, or not really?
I get labeled as an expert, and I kind of cringe at that. Not that
Really?
I know what I'm talking about, but part of it is just maybe I've got a little too much humility that I never want to put myself above somebody else. I always like to feel. I'm also I try to keep things even. And just and fair. And I don't like to put on airs or act like I'm better than somebody else. But experts won. Yesterday, somebody called me famous. I've been called.
Really? How come? How come?
Okay, well, sure. Yeah, I got a lot of followers on LinkedIn, but I wouldn't call myself famous, but okay. What's the other one that, I'm an influencer, like a social influencer, and that means something completely different than I guess what they're trying to say. So, I'd say expert's one of those where, I mean, I'm knowledgeable, but expert likes.
You're very like humbled about it. That's interesting. Where does that kind of like come from then, in terms of you wanting to be humble? Which is, by the way, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, by the way, it's a good thing. Like, why do you want to stay humble? Why do you want to remain why do you want to remain humble in that sense?
Ego is that gets in the way. And so if I have this, guys have a bravado, like, oh yeah, I know everything, like I see that in my classes. Not all guys, general statement. And if you have that kind of tough exterior that you know everything, maybe that works for your type of student, if that's the kind of instructor that you are, person that you are. But I need to remain authentic and approachable. And if I act like I know everything and you're beneath me, no one's going to listen to what I say. Again, I have to be relatable, and at my core, I'm a humanitarian. I care about people, which sounds odd, thinking that I deal with guns, because
I was about to say that. Yeah, I was actually about to say that, because some people would think like,
wait, what?
Yeah, like, I know. Sorry to interrupt you, but yeah.
But the truth is you can use a gun to take a life, and you can use one to save a life. And I want to be on the other side of saving lives and personal protection. And I care about people. I value life, and the ability to educate and empower others, like I said earlier, to kind of take the reins and overcome fear. So there's a lot to, just being approachable, and I would say maybe not pig-headed, which might offend some people, but I stopped making excuses for how I am. I'm very transparent, very open about kind of all aspects of life. I feel like social media, for one, is where we put all the good stuff and never talk about the bad stuff, and have to act like we've got it all together when there's days that we all fall apart. So I want to kind of keep that just kind of humility, and because this is who I am. I don't want to try to be somebody I'm not.
You know what? That's good. That's really good. You know what? I agree with that so much. And like, is that something then that doesn't get mentioned enough about you? So like, you've spoken about the fact that you're someone that actually wants to remain the other side of being a human. Can't say the word. I'm not even going to pronounce the word. Being like, to saving lives with guns rather than taking lives with guns. Is that something that doesn't really get mentioned about you enough, or is there other things that doesn't get mentioned enough about you?
Yeah, that probably. I mean, I don't know everything that gets mentioned about me, but that's probably one, especially on social. People who don't know me personally, they are quick to form an assumption. There's assumptions like that I have an agenda, that when I'm pushing material out on LinkedIn, like I had a small series of truth in terms. One of those was AR-15. And there's a lot of misconceptions on what an AR-15 is, what it looks like, what it does. And there were people who were, and I had I think 140,000 people that saw this post, and it still continues to circulate. But that was probably for LinkedIn, one of the most viral ones I have. And I would get comments that, oh, I know what you're up to, ma'am. And I'm like, whoa, I'm just trying to educate people on a common misconception. There is no agenda here. Or people assuming my political affiliation because of the firearms industry. They just naturally think, oh, you voted for this and that. No, I didn't vote for either. I voted, but there's a whole different way that I do about that. And another misconception that it's happened once or twice. Although I've lived in the Carolinas, I am not an all-American cross-country track athlete. There is another woman out there, same name, who has a Wikipedia page, and she's a runner. Not me. I'm not her.
So that's quite a few then. That's wow. That's so annoying that to hear, like, you get said that you've got an agenda and stuff like that. And it does that kind of frustrate you then? Does that really get you on nerves when you see, and not even like it frustrates you, but like, how do you deal with comments like that? Like, how do you deal with that, would you say?
Constructively, there's a time and a place, I guess, to what to say and when not to. For a lot of my life, I would not say anything, but sometimes saying nothing is still saying something. But there's a way to say something tactfully without being rude. So I will approach those in a way where I can still be myself, my authentic, compassionate self, without berating somebody, but saying, hey, buddy, no, wait a minute. I don't have an agenda, but it's definitely frustrating when people make assumptions and labels, and especially in the political spectrum, we see that a lot with BLM and things like that, which come up a lot in firearm conversations, the coffee drinkers at the range and things like that, where my personality, when I was talking about being that scale, I can say, well, wait a minute, I can see both sides on a communication side, to say, well, this is really what they're trying to say. It's just how we're hearing it. Defund the police is another one that, people are quick to jump to take it at face value without getting into what is it really trying to say. And I have my own opinions, which I try to also refrain from that, because again, people like to just go with what I say.
Yeah.
But I am able to divide and clearly see and weight and help the other side understand, or at least kind of hear what the other's trying to say, or what are they after? What do you want to try to, at least get some kind of equal playing field?
Absolutely. I mean, we at Common Sense have the absolute same sort of way of thinking. It's to have that, conversations from both sides to really understand each other, and to really create a healthy discourse. And it's nice to hear that you're someone like that as well, which is it's great to hear. And just to leave off in this kind of terms of interview, I really wish I got a bit more in terms of your marketing side of your work. But how do you then balance your involvement with the firearms industry and your marketing work as well? How do you balance that?
Sometimes they collide. I do marketing for some major brands in the firearms industry, so it's easy, right? But part of being in marketing in firearms, it's something I do. It's not who I am. So it's easy to just kind of put on the hat of, this is doing some marketing stuff. Marketing in any industry, because I'm involved in actually multiple industries with marketing, that, firearms is just one of those components. Now, with COVID, when the world shut down, I was still teaching classes. It's still part of public safety. So I was, for I guess another analogy, I had all burners at once, instead of trying to this is a side job or a hobby or something I do extra. Yeah. I was full steam on both. And that was challenging just because just constantly, I think in a 7-month period, I taught 34 classes.
What? Wow. That's a lot.
We have a cadre of plenty of instructors, so it's not just me out there. So, really, I think what helps as well is I'm creative. That's how I can do the marketing stuff. And that's why I enjoy teaching and finding ways to engage with others. But I'm also analytical. And that's in data and numbers and the strategy side of things, where I can compartmentalize and say, this is what I'm focusing on at this point, which requires a lot of discipline, scheduling, just having times where I have to kind of shut out everything else and focus on what I'm doing, which is something that it takes some practice to get there. I kind of juggle a lot between 3 kids, a husband, grad school. I've got several people I'm on payroll for, and an entrepreneur myself promoting my own classes. So it's about balance. It's back to the scales. Yeah,
definitely. That's the message from this interview, balancing scales. And hey, you're here, you're doing well. So, pat yourself on the back, and you're doing well. So honestly, Emily, it's been a pleasure actually speaking to you. I've actually learned quite a lot from speaking to you, and changed my mind on a few things as well. So, and that's what we love to do, change our minds and stuff. So thank you so much, Emily, for coming on to In Color. Where can our listeners or viewers at Common Sense find you in terms of socials and platforms? Yeah, you can plug away as much as you want.
So my handle is simply Emily 865. 865 is the area code here where we are in Tennessee. And I started off my website with a blog, and that was my blog's kind of title. So you can also go to my website, emilypritt.com. I'm on all platforms that I can think of, except TikTok and Twitter. So LinkedIn is where I'm most active. And I really try to put content out there that's informative, educating, just to dispel some of those rumors about firearms and keep people informed about things that they need to know as well.
Perfect.
Mhm.
Nice. All right. Thank you so much, Emily. And yeah, if you're first time listening to Common Sense or listening to In Color, why don't you like, comment, and subscribe to our channel? And also, if you're really interested in terms of our work, join at tcs.co.uk, where you can find more articles and videos like ourselves, like this. Sorry. And yeah, this is a fantastic interview, Emily, and really appreciate it. And until the next episode of In Color, stay in color.